Hello students, welcome to Practical Module 3. Today we are looking at Part 1. You are at the EDU-BUILD Institute Online Division. In your theory, we spoke quite extensively about domains of development and you received many resources regarding domains of development. For your practical, you will have to go back to understand this theory and put it into application. You have your cognitive domain that encompasses logic, problem solving, and passing information. The word passing means pulling apart. Children need to understand how to make sense of information. The physical sphere encompasses gross motor skills, fine motor skills, as well as their physical boundaries. Many studies have indicated that fathers are the perfect people to show children their physical boundaries in the sense that they have a lot of rough play. They engage in rough play. So children are more likely to engage in rough play with fathers, which is a good thing because they do uncover how far they're able to go, where mothers tend to be more cautious. If you're a mother, I think you can relate very much. The moral end, however, speaks about what is right and what is wrong. Empathy, honesty through guidance. You find that at their age, telling a little lie is quite common. Children might also feel anxiety about telling the truth, so they tend to hide it. But with persistence and guidance, children do often open up and they start to develop their moral compass. You especially want children to feel empathetic towards other living beings, whether that is people or animals. The social and emotional sphere concerns the regulation of emotions in children, whether or not they play well with others, and whether or not they make friends. As we spoke about, regulating your emotions at this age is something that children are still learning. As a matter of fact, they are learning in every single sphere. It is not something that they just know. And even as adults, we are learning in every single sphere. Once again, your theory spoke highly and in depth of all of this information. You'll see that I left the spiritual side of the domain on the outer skirts. This is not because it matters less. As a matter of fact, it might matter more. The meaning of life is something that we all question. What is it that we are doing here? Why are we here? How did we end up here? It is highly complex. So between materialists and spiritualists, the debate continues. I always recommend that students listen to Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an incredible Austrian psychiatrist. Not just that, he earned an honorary doctorate at the University of South Africa many years ago. This was, of course, after he had already completed his degree in psychiatry. He was already a doctor. Viktor Frankl was taken to Auschwitz, the concentration camp during the Nazi reign in Europe. And while everyone in his family perished, his mother, his father, his wife, he on the other hand survived it. There were other family members who he had lost too. And one might really feel like, well, that's the end of it. I don't know how to carry on. But Viktor Frankl believed that if you have a will to meaning, is what he called it, you are able to withstand all challenge that come your way. So your sense of spirituality, your sense of purpose, this leads you forward. Of course, he was a Jew. That is why he was sent to Auschwitz. And he watched many men around him die ruthless and senseless deaths. He wrote a lot about this in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which I would highly recommend you read. It is brilliant. But your spiritual well-being, finding a sense of purpose, reaching out to God, this encompasses all other spheres of our lives. So just because it's on the outer skirt does not mean that we are not dealing with it. in depth, we are. It encompasses all other facets of who we are. I also put it on the outer end because for this particular activity, you do not need to dive into it, as it can be extremely difficult to gauge child to child. You will find, however, that children show it in the simplest of ways, in how they pick a flower, in how content they are in their environment, in how happy they might be, excited they find themselves. So the spiritual end was left out of this particular activity, but it does not mean it matters less. Now, your criteria here says assess the children's progress, performance, and participation, taking into consideration diverse learners. Remember that you are likely to learn in the mainstream or teach in the mainstream. This, however, does not mean that you will not have children who are neurodivergent. While most neurodivergent children do go to special needs places, depending on the degree of the neurodivergence, it is likely that even in mainstream capacity, that you will deal with children who might have neurodivergence, such as even ADHD, which tends to be and seems to be a little too common these days. I'm once again going to take this opportunity to tell you to limit screen time with children, to use it sparingly, and only for educational matters as far in as possible, especially at this young age. Now, I've put together this little table for you, which you will find in your practical book. This table was pre-populated to assist you so that you don't have to put together a table of your own. I've placed the child's age at 4 years old. In addition to that, if you do not know a 4-year-old, if you do not work in a practical setting with children, I have included a case study to assist you. You are going to read through it extensively and decide whether or not the child has fully achieved, partially achieved, or not achieved the set criteria. Please put a tick aside each heading. So you can tick for 1, a little bit below that you can tick for 2. Alternatively, I'd like you to put the number, so you can put number 1 into, let's say, fully achieved, and then you can tick. You can put the number 2 at partially achieved if that is what is going on, and you can tick. So you can add the number and you can tick it off whether the child has fully achieved it or partially achieved it. Regulates emotions. Oh, my apologies. I just want to go back. If you would like, you can also just put the number as opposed to putting the number and ticking. You can also just put the number in the particular box. So if the child is able to sound out the letters A to Z phonetically with guidance, you can say fully achieved in number 1. How that looks like is that you, as the tutor or teacher or practitioner, you'll say A, B, K, D, E, and the child after each letter must go after you. The child should also be able to do this independently, and then you guide only where they struggle. Remember that we don't say A, B, C, D at this age, but we can say the letter A makes the sound E. The letter B makes the sound B. The letter C makes the sound K. And you do your entire phonetic alphabet with children. The child should be able to write their name independently. Let us have a look at what that might look like. So we start with identifying letters over here. As we build to the child's name, so you can identify letters, you'll see the first 2 letters, the first 2 A's. The child did not achieve the desired outcome. So you can say in this case that the child is partially achieved, but the child in the second set has achieved. Because even though it is a little rocky, the child has still been able to go over all of the dots with ease, it seems, or at least with a very good degree of precision. As we go forward, you'll see that when the child writes his or her own name, when they write using guidance, and these dots you can find in many spaces, I would highly recommend using software like Canva, for example, just as an example, not as an endorsement. It really does help you get to these letters. It's got brilliant resources, but nonetheless, so you've got the child's name and the child writes over the dots, so with guidance. It might look different when the child writes without the dots, but the child has still achieved. You can very clearly make out the name of the child. Let's look at the difference. This is very upright. It's a lot more precise. And over here, it's a little more creative, but very clear. The child should be able to count to 100 independently. You can help the child do that by putting together a number chart as well, and just on a daily basis learning to count. A valuable lesson that I was taught by the founder or co-founder of EDU-BUILD is to do things like clap or snap your fingers, have a little sound while they're counting, so you can do both. One where they count without sound, the next where you say 1, 2, 3, 4, so they count at the beat. It's like they're counting beats as well, so it keeps them kind of statically engaged too. They should be able to count backwards from at least 20 independently. Social and emotional. I just want to go back quickly. With the counting, you can also teach them. So this is a child coloring in, teaching them how to identify numbers, and then learning or teaching them how to identify numbers 10 to 100. Counting in tens to 100 also assists them with counting to 100 because they tend to forget. They can go 11 to 19 and then they forget what's after 19. 21 to 29, they forget that it's 30 next. 31 to 40, forgetting, or they count until 39, forgetting that 40 is next. So you can teach them to count in tens as well. I like to just remind them that after 1 is 2, so after 10 is 20, after 3 is 4, so after 39 it's 40, and so on. And so that does help them learn. Teaching them to count on their fingers, or teaching them to count fingers, so you can do an image of fingers where they can write the number above each finger. They can also do a few fine motor skills where they count beads or different objects, where learning is integrated between different domains. So they can count and sort objects. They can count hard copy or hard figure numbers, so where you can have wooden numbers. You can also laminate numbers and let them count them out in the correct order. So there are various ways that we can go about this. When we speak about the social and emotional well-being of a child, we've mentioned regulates emotions partially. You'll notice that children cannot always regulate their emotions all the way. But regulating it partially and slowly coming all the way to a regulated state is what we are looking at. We know that children fight. We know that when tensions start to rise, that they don't use their, oh shame, I'm looking at this little kid and the crying, and it's sad, and I'm only giggling because I'm thinking about my own children in this, and it exhausts you. It's more of a tired giggle than anything else. So children still need to learn to regulate their emotions partially until they learn to regulate it all the way. They are able to calm down with intervention. So you go to them and you speak to them. You explain that something is, what they can do to avoid further conflict. what they can do to resolve conflict without avoiding confrontation per se. Understands basic emotions, so such as being happy, sad, angry, excited. And we teach them about emotions. We can make little emotional tickets where we just cut out circles. I like to laminate everything, so you can cut these out and laminate them because children do destroy these things. And you can just show them. You can even put it on a little kebab stick, a little skewer, and you turn it around. You can make it the size of your face and hold it up, and you can role play as well. You can make them sensory, and perhaps you can teach them that on something angry, maybe it feels a lot rougher. You don't really want to touch it. On something happy, it feels exciting. On something, it could feel smooth and comforting. On something confusing, you could have various types of textures from smooth to rougher, and it's confusing. So you can make it a sensory experience for them. You want to teach them breathing exercises as well. So there are various options we can use, like box breathing or belly breathing. With your box breathing, you inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold for a count of 4, and you just repeat the pattern of 4s. You can teach them how to do that. You want to make sure that they don't hold their breath to a point where they are struggling and suffering. And then they exhale strongly. They can breathe in as much as possible through the diaphragm as well. This is called diaphragmatic breathing. You breathe in through your nose, allowing your abdomen to rise, and you exhale slowly through your mouth, letting the abdomen fall, and you relax. This does help children regulate. Children also have this thing where everything has got to be fair. Now, as an adult, you understand, look, sometimes things are not fair, move on. But for children, they want to feel heard. They want to feel like their part and their side of the story is not just overseen. So we try to come to an agreement where we can compromise and teach them how to compromise. If you don't want to share your toy, well, fine, then the compromise, I guess you don't get any toy. Alternatively, you can play with it for 5 minutes. Your friend can play with it for 5 minutes, and you can alternate. And this way you can both have a turn independently. They can identify body language, so folding of arms, scrunching the face, throwing a tantrum. They can see, oh, that's a bit dangerous, or okay, that's very welcoming. Let me walk in. I'll be safe here. Then their moral compass practices honesty but might require pushing. As small fibs are common at this age, so you don't just accept that because fibs are common that you are going to accept that they've told one. So you are going to try to guide them towards honesty. Say to them, look, I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to scream. I need to know the truth so that we can handle the situation as properly as possible. And you guide them towards it. They share with peers and respect and practice respectful conversation with teachers and peers. As for physical, they should be able to walk on a balance beam from length to length until they become Olympians, like the lady in the middle, and you can teach them how to backflip. I'm just kidding. Do not do that. Don't do that. Just kidding. So you can start on the floor. You skip the Olympian move and you go to something a little more elevated when you know they can keep their balance a bit more. They can develop their fine motor skills using little building chips, as you can see in the first image below, doing beadwork and practicing letters and images in sand and other materials like paint, where they can finger paint as well. They should be able to climb the jungle gym with ease and balance. Please make sure they are supervised at all times. And they should be able to place beads on a string and hold their pencils correctly. They should have a proper pencil grip. You do get many pencils that have a grip where children are able to hold onto the grip to teach them how to hold a pencil. So please, once again, you're going to have a look at the child, or you are going to have a look at the case study and say whether or not the child has achieved or fully achieved or partially achieved. Fully achieved, partially achieved, or not achieved. I will put up videos as a case study for you to watch. Should you have any questions or queries, please feel free to give me a call or send a message, and I'll be glad to assist you. So to be clear, you're only doing part 1, you're doing the first part of your activity directly after this.